really just take responsibility for my script. Because my script in this dream, I do get to be a victimizer. I've done it with Cliff. I did it with Ronnie. I can be a victimizer.
Oh yeah, we all can. I do it myself.
Yeah, I can do what everybody else do. Believe me, I'm not an angel. I wouldn't be here if I was.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Let's see. Why for some reason I'm not hearing you.
I'm looking forward to tonight. I love when the two of them are together. We all do, Rafi and Dove.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you continue with your reading.
Okay, so I'm on
And
page 10. This is the first book. Parents and Children, Our Most Difficult Classroom. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I am here to teach myself that it's always me with a capital M. So Ken is saying here, it's all about the fact that we presume that we get abused by others. And the only thing that we have made as a dream is a dream of hatred. And the way to hide it is the ego uses it to project onto others when these are our thoughts. These are all my thoughts that are making up the dream. And it makes a lot of sense. I picked this dream. You know, it's funny because I identify with Bill Thetford a lot because he appeared to me to be very sensitive. So anyway, he says there must be some acute problem of his own that would make him so eager to accept this misperception of his own worth. One of Bill's childhood experience was that his parents did not value him. Now that's what I felt. So this is why Spirit directed me to this. There's four of us and I was the easiest child. Totally terrified of my mother. If she yelled at me, I just shut up. And I thought that, basically, as everyone feels, you're not loved by the same. Well, it can't be because this dream was a setup for the people out there that aren't there and you're just seeing your own thoughts. And so one of Bill's childhood experiences was that his parents did not value him. His older sister died as a child, and his parents were devastated by her death. When Bill was around 8 or 9 years old, he developed rheumatic fever and was seriously ill. For a year or so, it was touch and go, but he finally recovered. The clear message he remembered receiving from his parents was that the wrong child died. Now, I can identify with that as an ego. That's basically the way I think the ego would have. Now, again, the ego's in control. I'm really the one that's watching it. So Sharon would think, well, why don't they love me? Because I was scared of, I had an older sister who has very serious OCD. And if I would move anything in her closet, because we shared a bedroom, we had a very small house, and we shared a bedroom. And if I would ever put something away in the closet, she would then punch me because it wasn't done where it was filed. Now, these are definitely, projections of my mind making me the victim. And I have never been able to even tell her off because I always knew she had mental health issues. And I tend to have a lot of compassion for people that can't help it. But I have to see that sometimes I can't help it. And that's all part of it. And the forgiveness is between me and me. Jesus is me. Jesus is the only thought of love. That's all it is. So she says, he says, he goes on, of course, as a child and even as an adult, that attitude is hard to let go of. Good point. The point, however, is that we do not let it go, period. One cannot be loving, healthy parent if one still retains issues like these from childhood. Now, what I did with my children was I tended to go overboard. This ego is highly sensitive. So I tended to, drive them to school, do whatever they needed because I was like really honored to be a mom. And behind that honor was, I'll be better than my mother. And that's what this is, kill or be killed, right? So did I rage on my kids? Not rarely, but they were in the house where I raged on their father. And this anger and rage is not about anyone in this dream. It's all about the fact that feeling as though God doesn't want me. He's going to say yes to everyone but me. He's going to say, not you. That's really deep into the unconscious. There must be some acute problem of his own that would make him so eager to accept their misperception of his own worth. Well, I never thought, no ego human thinks that we have so much guilt. We don't think that we're equal. We think that one has more, and it's just the way it is. So the tendency can always be regarded as punitive. It cannot be justified by inequality of strengths of parents and children. Well, that's the way we set it up. We set it up that the parents know and we don't. And two things happen. We either do everything they say or we fight against it. But all of that is the way the kill and be killed was set up. So parents are the authority and have the power, and children are regarded as innocent, helpless victims. Now, Ken will come back now and say we are never innocent because we're listening to a ridiculously sick mind. Because all I'm seeing are my thoughts. I'm not seeing people. I'm not seeing anything but images I put out there, and the images are absolutely meaningless. So parents are the authority and have the power, and children are regarded as innocent. And the thing about the ego is it never quits. The only way it shuts down is when you finally say no to it. Yes, Jesus is saying that we cannot justify the belief that our parents made us this way by claiming to be helpless. The clear implication is that children are not helpless nor innocent. This cannot be understood on the level of the body where we are helpless, but only on the level of mind. If I think I'm in this body, I'm in hell. If I remember I'm mind and I'm only seeing my own images, then I'm okay. In other words, children set up their parents to be victimizers. And what they're doing, it's an analogy we all do with God in the separation. And this is a perfect storm. To be the victim and have people say, oh, poor thing. We somehow think that makes us happy. There's no happiness, it's conflict. So the inequality is never more than temporary and is largely a matter of maturational and thus physical difference. It does not last unless it is held on to. Well, who's going to hold on to it? The ego. That's what the ego does. And as this ego is undoing, it's kind of having like a shit fit that I can be in peace, that I can sit in peace, that I know that the character is nothing but illusory. And I can throw it all out because the ego is actually just talking to itself, right? It's never talking. So when we use the Holy Spirit, that's what we are. The Holy Spirit sees the dream of madness. Yeah, here he writes, in this world, we alternate between generations, mom hard as parent, me soft. Either way, the kids say you could have been better. Parents always. And in the ego thought system, you can never be good enough because there's always someone out there for you to compare yourself to. This is really a simple process, and at times it's not easy, but this is the way it is. Jesus turns next to an incident that Bill always remembered. When he was grown, his father came into his office and was furious. In Bill's language, he had a real fit and acted out against him, destroying his office in the process. Now, I'm not going to lie today because I'm talking to myself always, but yesterday, whatever it was that made the ego, fearful, was I was not so good with my husband. I was just like angry because right now my driving is off. Like it's almost like I'm aging in a way that, of course, it's individualized. You can't compare yourself to anyone. But the ego is remembering for me how I felt as a child. So all I have to say is, I'm not that. I'm not that, and not feed the monster, because that's what it is. I always believed it was my friend, and as the years go on, I see that it has nothing, no investment in anything other than keeping you in the dream or nightmare. Consider how many times we have told and retold incidents from the past, or at least thought about them again and again. Right on. That's what minds do. It does not have to be a distant past, but something that was done to us yesterday or even this morning. How often do we replay our abuse stories, whether overt, sexual, physical, or emotional abuse, or subtle ones? How much a part of our memories they are, how gladly we pay a therapist good money week in, week out to retell our story over and over. And to get to a point where the story is meaningless is what I'm seeing happening. Just by coming, it's like going to a 12-step meeting and saying, I'm an alcoholic. I'm an egoholic, right? I need to find out exactly why I want a machine to orchestrate this seeming body. The very fact that we do this tells us the great importance we place on the event. We do so because, like Bill, we wanted the event to happen. Well, it's all guilt. Listen, God, it was everybody but me. So you will accept me into heaven, won't you? Am I going to be the only one that's not accepted? I mean, this is what the ego is really saying. You're bad. You do nothing right. You're dumb. People at your age can do more than you do. All of it. And I'm not the person. And that's where the problem comes. You know what? It's funny. I was listening to one of Keith Kavanaugh's things, and he was cracking up laughing because somebody asked him, does he ever fall down? And he started to laugh. Yes, of course. And that's the beauty of a good group that really meets you where you are, because you can start laughing, but if it starts to be like a there's just nobody in our group that doesn't care about each other. And I'm making the group special, and I want to let that go. I want to start to see that right here, right now, because every group that you go in isn't necessarily going to have the same energy. But rather than talk about, spirit moves us out of places that don't serve us anymore, right? But it has nothing to do with failing or not failing, and I think because we live in a world of kill or be killed, that's why the defensiveness comes up. We do so because, like Bill, we wanted the event to happen. I can hide my guilt. This, again, does not make us responsible for other people's egos that act out against us. Yet the fact that we never let go of the memory, and indeed often build our self-concept on the foundation of such abuse, reveals that something is rotten in the state of our minds, and it is not what was done to us. What is rotten is the guilt that says we deserve to have terrible things done to us. What a relief. I was abused. That's what we do. Or that's what I do. And so what Jesus told Bill was a specific application of what he was teaching his first two students. And all of us in this course, no one is ever justified in seeing oneself as an innocent, unfairly treated victim. If we perceive ourselves that way, referred to again as a temptation, it is because we want to be unfairly treated. And that's coming at the lower part of consciousness. It is because we want to be unfairly treated. Recall this dramatic passage from the workbook about the pathetic figure we all aspire to be. He seems a sorry figure, weary, worn, in threadbare clothing, and with feet that bleed a little from the rocky road he walks. No one but has identified with him, for everyone who comes here has pursued the path he follows, and has felt defeat and hopelessness as he is feeling them. Yet is he really tragic when you see that he is following the way he chooses, and need but realize who walks within and open up his treasures to be free? Now, this takes contemplation and honesty. Like honesty in the course is consistency. And, I'm not always consistent. I was saying before that, yes, I'm totally different this time with the election. I don't want to sign up or anything. However, I have a preference, and it's a strong one. It's a strong one. Why would one presidential election bother, well, because the mind has made one the sinner and one the saint. And that's the appearance, when in fact we're all God. We're all God's son. Moreover, if we consistently maintain that we have been unfairly treated as a child, there is no way we can avoid unfair treatment when we are parents. It's funny because with my boys, I'm so close to them. But when they get mad at me, they will just mouth off, and I just sit there and I just change the topic. Or I would say, because I understand that ego's on autopilot. So, but isn't it interesting that they don't push my buttons like this seeming woman yesterday because, I was reprimanded a couple times. And that's the arrogance of the ego, that I would even think I can't be reprimanded. When you're in a world of bad and good, you're not gonna always be good. You can't be, or you're not going to appeal to everyone. So what is it that Jesus is asking us? Give up the world. Give up the world. Moreover, if we consistently maintain, okay, he said that. This holds whether we believe we are unfairly treated by our children or treat them unfairly. Now, if I treat somebody unfairly, my ego goes nuts on me. Or we abuse authority in whatever position we have, parental or otherwise. Jesus is telling Bill there's a decision-making part of the mind that holds on to this self-image. Yet that part is totally unconscious, which is why this issue continues and continues. The question then becomes, why should anyone accord an obvious misperception so much power? There cannot be any real justification for it because even Bill himself recognized the real problem by saying, how could he do this to me? The answer is he didn't. You did. I had a dream at night. There's no one there. I'm just seeing faces and images of my mind that's creating an atrocity out of all innocence, Bill's father did this to himself and to the office. He did not do it to Bill. Let me read that again. Bill's father did this to himself and to the office. He did not do this to Bill. Whatever his father's projections onto Bill, they were projection and had nothing to do with his son. Now, we're always projecting. So Bill took it personally because we're conditioned to believe that our parents will accept us on every level. And that's not true. That's not true. I'm looking back at my life with my children, and I feel as though, as an ego mother, I owned everything when I made mistakes, and I still do. But when my son was young and he fell into drug addiction, I was devastated, and I had to get educated on what it was and how this happened. And the ego will perpetuate that idea that it happened, but it was a setup. We, as the Son of God, set this up as the dreamer of the dream. And until the subconscious lets go and realizes that you're doing this to yourself, and that truly is the secret of salvation. Do you want to share, Dove, at all? Anybody? In other words, he made a connection between his father's aggression and himself as a victim. Again, the problem was not what his father did or did not do, but Bill's interpretation. Now, the ego does the interpretation. The ego is the one that will call out everything that's not even out there. Again, the problem. Now, I have to say, with the election, I don't have the anxiety if my side doesn't win, because the thing that came to me was, if they take Social Security away, we could all live together. People did that. We as humanity have evolved to a level where we've become a very selfish world, but it had to get there. And if you look through history, America was founded on slaves. I mean, Native Americans were, less than, and they just did away with them. And that's why I really believe that, when certain people talk about, what's coming on with, different people that are coming into the country, we have all been there, not in this form, but in other forms. So again, the problem was not what his father did or did not do, but Bill's interpretation. This clearly applies to everyone, for no one truly does anything to us. Perpetrators of hate do it to themselves and then project the hate-filled message onto us. If we buy into it, we but join their dance of hatred and guilt. So I can sit with that. And so Jesus' message is that we must accept responsibility for our decisions. We are not responsible for the decisions others make, but we are most definitely responsible for the decision to let their decisions affect us. Our bodies or offices can indeed be affected, but never our minds. So the separate self's always going to take it personally. Bill's lament, how could he do this to me, was not a genuine question. Rather, it was a statement of victimization. How could you do this to me? And Jesus' answer to all of us is sharing the same lament is unequivocal. He didn't. Now, that's really the truth. So sitting with that, a dream is a dream is a dream. I don't remember my dream last night, but when I remember dreams, they seem as real as this right now. So to get honest is to just say, I just have to let it go. Forgiveness is never to a person, and it's never to me, Sharon. It's the mind that chose the wrong mind, the part of my mind where all the guilt is still there. This is the key theme in A Course in Miracles, for it goes to the heart of forgiveness. We forgive others by demonstrating our invulnerability to their attack. While our bodies may be vulnerable, we are not the body. Now you hear this. What is required for this to work is to shift identification from the body to the mind. As soon as I think that this is Sharon with a story of victimhood and victimization, I'm going to be in hell. You can't relate to a body. Yeah, he's right. You got to laugh because it's all stupid. And that's depending on the interpretation of what Sharon believes she deserves in a world of form. When the fact, it's my world. It's no one else's, right? So we forgive others by demonstrate our invulnerability to their attack. While our bodies may be vulnerable, we are not the body. What is required for this to work? So it's about taking your place as the infinite, no longer being this small, separated self. And the reason that we are afraid, or I am afraid of love, is because it's subconscious. So our dream it's the subconscious level. We have a lot of hatred, self-hatred, because it can't be at anyone else, right? Indeed, people might have hurt our bodies or the bodies of loved ones. They might have hurt our bank accounts, houses, or cars, but they did not do this to us. They did it to themselves. We're always, always, always doing this to ourselves. Needless to say, this is the most difficult lesson for a child to learn, but A Course in Miracles is not written for children. However, it is written for spiritual children, and that's what I would say. I'm still in the child mind, and when I'm in the child mind, I'm in hell. And the thing is, if I keep saying that this happened to me and I don't like it, when blah, 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 I'm just reiterating something that doesn't really exist. However, it is written for spiritual children. It is only when we get older that we are able to say finally that carrying around the burden of victimization and abuse is no longer worth it. That is when we are able to lay it down. It's funny, because I'm having like different deficiencies in my brain as a human, the ego was making a big deal out of it. It's saying basically that I'm back to how I felt as a little girl. There's something wrong with me. So a lot of my skills that I had earlier in life are still, there's still some kind of interpretation that I'm not good enough, that I'm not okay, that I'm not equal. Now, Spirit did move me out of groups where there are teachers. The teachers can serve for a certain amount of time, but the only teacher that's ever bringing you clarity is the one that sits within you. So it is only when we get older that we are able to say, that's the thing. Like, I'm going to be 70 in January. So it's time for me to just be 70 and just say, listen, I want to have a good time here and not look at the outside picture. Going back to the context of this message, Jesus is telling Bill that the problem was teaching his class goes back to the unforgiveness of his father. Now look at this. This is how we have to look at this. Going back to the context of this message, once we have one resentment of one person and we don't completely forgive them, it will show up as a manifestation in other relationships. So it's very important to take back the power. And, Marianne Williamson's line is that we are afraid of our own power, and that happens really at the lower part of the ego. The ego says, you can't be this way. You're separate. You're alone. That you're sensitive. This, that, and none of it's true. And sometimes I do laugh, and sometimes I don't. It's funny when you walk away, it's just your dream. So it really doesn't matter, but I had a belief that other people know more than me. Or I have the other belief, I know more than other people. And that's the I know mind. It really believes that you know a lot. You don't. Here is the important sentence again to which we all can relate. The many times that he has commented on this event alone would suggest the extreme importance of this misperception in his own distorted thinking. It's all distortion. I'm looking at misperception and believing that's real, and what's real is meaningless, when in fact the unchangeable awareness is what I am. It's love's presence. Be honest with yourself and see how many times you tell the same story. I can raise my hand high. Someone in your family acts out against you and you call the rest of the family to tell them the story. I did that. Someone in your family acts out against you and you call the rest of the family to tell them the story. Someone in the office does something unkind or unfeeling and you run to tell your friends in the office. Your boss comes down hard on you and you quickly tell everyone you can find. The more you tell your sad story, the better you feel, because you are strengthening the perception, really a misperception, that you are the victim. Let's see okay, Sharon, you are advancing. It's so beautiful. You are a flower that is opening to but I still have well, that's ego saying that. I'm not good. I'm not there yet. I am there, but it's a matter of just letting it go, realizing that I'm truly hurting myself. Our not letting them go tells us how very important they are to us. To repeat this crucial point, we are not responsible for other people's abusive behavior toward us, but we are responsible for the belief that their behavior has to do with us personally. Now, I have this little dog that's sitting here now that's a little bit of a tyrant. I could make a whole story up about why he's that way, but I have to say, if you give me a minute, Mickey, or who's that? I don't know who.
That's
if you want to take
Lindy.
Mickey, yeah, Mickey. But there's no, the one that's down here.
Lindy.
Oh, Lindy. All right, if you could talk for a minute, I just want to give my dog something to eat. Okay, I'll be right back. I have to tell you, he starts slamming. Codependent mom with dog. Lynn, you want to talk for a minute? I'll be right back.
Sure. Oh, this is actually hilarious because yes, I know I have the cats that do exactly the same thing. They are really brats and they want what they want when they want it. And you know what's crazy? You know, I understand it completely and I agree. I'll give them whatever it is. Why? Because they don't have a choice. Honestly, they do not have a choice. They are my slave, just like our children. You think our children, have a choice about, what their situation and circumstance is? No, they live in our world. We're the ones who make up what it is that we want them to experience. And so, yeah, I mean, kids become rebellious. They don't like, even if it's the best thing for them, even if you're giving them absolutely the best thing for them, they are going to think you're trying to kill them. Why? Because that's just the way the ego works, and it's that way for everyone. So, let's think about our, total situation where we are all victims and we are all victimizers according to the world, but in reality, we're just acting out the perimeters of the script. There wouldn't be a story that was worth staying here and watching if there wasn't drama, if there wasn't, a love, the romance, um, anger, war, all these things that keep us enraptured by this story, they're all a part of the script because that is what the ego uses to um, keep us in under control. And so I'm not sure why we're looking at Sharon's chair there. Put that on that way and see if that works. Yes, okay. Anyways, and I have no idea really what's being seen on YouTube either. Anyway, the whole thing being that um, there are no victims and no victimizers because none of it is actually happening. It's all a part of the script. It's all a part of the story. So, if you were an actor in a movie, in fact, I was just reading an article a while ago about Henry Cavill, and I really love The Witcher. I am really into fantasy, science fiction, that kind of thing. So one of my very favorites is The Witcher, Geralt of Rivia. He's an amazing character. And what happened, I'm just telling a real quick story here. What happened is that he what's his name was hired. Oh, Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill played that role in the show. And for the first couple seasons, it was really good. But, then the writers decided, they thought, that this should happen or that should happen, that were out of character for The Witcher. They were not how The Witcher would be. Um, and Henry Cavill was like, no, I won't play a part that is out of compliance with what my understanding of the character is. I won't play that part. I refuse to play that part. And he quit. He left. And a lot of people were devastated, including me. I was really not happy about it. But the whole thing being that he had a choice of how to play the character. And when the character was not in compliance with what his standards, what he believed the character should be, he quit. He said, "No, I won't do this anymore." And it's like, this is millions of dollars this man would have been getting for playing this character. This is fame and notoriety and people, I mean, there was a lot at stake. And he just said, "I don't want that. I want the character to be what the character is." That's it. I want the character to be what the character is. So anyway, and that's what we can do. We can just say, no, I'm not going to play that part. The character I'm going to play is the character that is in compliance with what I believe is true. Anyway, Sharon, I'm going to give the mic back to you, and you have about 10 more minutes on this.
Yeah, that's all. The thing about it is until, it's one thing to have the consistency, which I have right now, but I don't always have, but the honesty that I have in the course is telling the truth of where I'm at. In one moment, I could be totally free, and in the next moment, I have more to come up. And that's where the lessons come in. We are not the body. That's the biggest lesson, right? How could, we always say, how could he do this to me? Was not a genuine question. Rather, it was a statement of victimization. How could you do this to me? And Jesus answers, he didn't, because nothing happened. And this takes a long time, or seeming time. Bill's question, which he must ask himself very honestly, is whether he's willing to demonstrate that his parents have not hurt him. Unless he's willing to do this, he has not forgiven them. That is what I need to look at. The one thing I learned in the Course in Miracles, if you forgive one person who really, really hurt you completely, then everybody's forgiven. Now, that person or seeming person would be me. Now, the character's meaningless because I'm mind, and I'm picking the wrong mind all the time, believing that I matter as a body. And the ego has a very sneaky way of making that happen. So we always forgive others so we can demonstrate that we're like Jesus. And for this mind, it sometimes has a temper tantrum. Indeed, people might have hurt our bodies or bodies of loved ones. They might have hurt our bank accounts. Or I read this. What he's basically saying, Ken, is that you're always wrong if you think something's outside of you. There is nothing outside of you. Coming back to the context of this message, Jesus is telling Bill that the problem with teaching his class goes back to the unforgiveness of his father. And for me, it was my mother. She was, at times, she was a wonderful, loving mother, and then she could get very cruel. And seemingly in my dream, I didn't bond with my mother at birth because she had polio. And so I had like a trauma bond, but there was so much insidious beliefs that she unconsciously gave this mind to really get the help I needed. Even at 24, I went and had therapy because I was so afraid of my mom. So this is where I have to, my work is not really to forgive her. My work is that, because she wasn't there, is to forgive my unloving thoughts about me. Because the thoughts I put out there as the dreamer. So he says, be honest with yourself and see how many times you tell the same story. Someone in your family acts it against you. Someone in the office does something unkind. Now, this is something that I would do. I would call I'm one of 4 girls. And I'd quickly call one sister that was going to tell me I was right, that I was a victim. And I was always in like a very neurotic Jewish woman, okay? My mom was worried about everything. And that just is part of the dream. The more you tell your sad story, the better you feel because you're strengthening the perception. But that's the problem. How can I do anything if I don't let it go? It has to be let go. And we repeatedly regurgitate our terrible childhood experiences. Are not letting them go tells us how important they are to us. To repeat this crucial point, we are not responsible for others' people's abusive behavior toward us, but we are responsible for the belief that their behavior has to do with us personally, when in truth, it has nothing to do with us at all. I mean, if nothing happened and this is my dream, then what's the problem? Now Jesus shifts to therapy, in effect, saying in his message that psychotherapy, teaching, and parenting are all the same for all parties. On the level of form, of course, the respected roles are quite different, not to mention unequal. The right-minded purpose of all therapy, teaching, and parenting is to demonstrate that the inequality is temporary and illusory. Let that sink in. How real do I want to make this dream? I have some friends that are Course in Miracles students who are still really upset about this election. And they say, I don't even care. I don't care that I'm listening to the ego. Well, the problem is that as I think that so-and-so's out there, I'm just strengthening the ego thought system, which is all misperception. As a child, we cannot help seeing ourselves through parental eyes. Yet the problem is that we so often do not outgrow these perceptions. Now, one thing about Ken Wapnick, he always wants us to be gentle because the ego's not. And if we take ourselves as the right-minded decision maker, we can be gentle. Yes, Bill's parents misperceived him, but Bill held on to this misperception until he made it his own. And so Jesus asked him and all of us to let it go. And that becomes like when you finally are so sick of the story and sick of listening to the barking of the ego, you somehow it just goes away. But just to come last night and just tell the truth of where I was actually helpful. Because the thing that I had in other groups was shame. Oh, I don't see it that way. A couple of years ago in 21, when there was that, thing with the insurrection, I didn't care. I was just having a temper tantrum, and that's in my mind. And all I'm doing is feeding the wrong wolf. There's a wolf that's nice and a wolf that really hates us. There's no justification for holding on to it except the desire to get as much ego mileage as possible from it. We are the innocent victims, and it is not our fault that our lives are such a mess, and we cannot adequately perform certain functions, if at all. Well, right-mindedness came in, when I moved to Altoona. There was a lot of stuff, being that at the time, I was still teaching, and if I was unfairly treated, I would just basically say, well, only God is real. But I didn't really see what was underneath. All of the stuff that I've hidden, that I've personally hidden, and taking that responsibility. I would say in the beginning as a course student, I didn't feel, I would just say, oh, a mantra, only God is real. And I had this way from Holy Spirit to look in a corner of a room and it stopped my mind. But I think when other stuff started to come up, the ego was, I weakened and let the ego talk. Parents do not create the image of their children. Hi, Glorian. Hi, sweetie. A child comes into the world with its self-image intact. One of the tremendous burdens parents labor under. Unfortunately, reinforced by psychologists. Yeah, they want you to say it's not you. When in fact, I always thought it was me. So my therapist took her a year for me to even break down that story because I thought, oh, I'm not going to talk about my mother. That would be a cardinal sin. And when it comes out and you have all of that stuff, that it wasn't you and that you were abused, then you get a Course in Miracles and it's like you did it. But there was something in this mind that always knew it. And I think that is where the release is. There was no mother. There was just a dream. And everybody is the same. And I'm not going to walk away from watching television because I enjoy it. And it's the one thing my husband loves, so I do it with him. But, I can really just take spirit with me because the traps are always there, because in every movie you watch, there's always a victim. And this is the movie that I am now transcending, and it will transcend in seeming time, but it's really just now. It's never about the future. One of the things that I remember saying to my mother is, I didn't ask to be brought here. I would say things like that. That is what the ego does. Yeah, we all did. We all made the same mistake. The ego's strategy in a nutshell, I'm here, but I'm not responsible. In other words, I am the innocent victim, which is everyone's self-image. Parents, therefore, do not make that image, but they reinforce it. Similarly, we reinforce the ego in each other, just as that we have the power to reinforce the Holy Spirit. That's what we have to really look at. Now, when I say we, I should just speak with the eye that is dreaming, my mind, because I remember years ago I would share and gather, and Lenny Rose would say, Sharon, stop saying we, it's you. And I would then come back and, pretty much understand that. But this process has layers. It's not, yeah, it's a simple process, but you can't fail it. It's only the dream that you're dreaming. So with that, I'm going to let the mic go and welcome Glorian and Mickey and Dub and Lynn. Okay, over to everybody now. Lynn, you can put out the never forget to laugh.
Hey, thank you so much, Sharon. This has been a wonderful hour, and I honestly, it's great to listen and reflect on all these things that you're reading about. I love it. Thank you for choosing to do this. It's really